1 million liters of milk daily. And a huge chunk of that, or a big percentage of that milk, actually just comes from here, Kiambu, Nyeri, Nyandarua, Meru, the guys who, so to speak, feed the country. So I think we need to understand that it is our right, it is the birthright of people of Mount Kenya to belong, as it is the right of any other person to belong to where they come from. So in a nutshell, I believe we are there because we have to influence politics based on our economics, and the country cannot wish away Mount Kenya.
I like that. So I want to go straight to that very, very important question.
Yes.
Does the president really need Mount Kenya to win the elections?
Well...
Or he can win the elections without Mount Kenya? Because you're telling us Mount Kenya is definitely very important, you know, based on how strategically it's been located, and when it comes to biashara, the economy of the country, Amazing. I mean, it's very powerful if you look at it economically. But politically speaking...
Of course he needs Mount Kenya.
Yeah.
You know, if we had an economic crisis, then we have a political crisis. So as a president of the Republic of Kenya, it doesn't have to be His Excellency William Ruto. It doesn't have to be whoever. He will still need to come back to Mount Kenya. And that one is just out of question.
It's just a given.
You have to.
I like that. And
they control a quarter of the economy, so to speak.
So
you have to.
You have to include them in your.
Yes.
Yeah. What about the perception moving forward of these tours now that it's of course wrapped up? Do you think it improves the approval ratings of the president? Because some people are saying, oh, okay, the turn-up was a bit impressive. The crowd was kind of huge. You know, whether it was organic or not. Moving forward, what perception does it leave when it comes to President Ruto and the Mount Kenya ground, the Murima?
I think the dice is cast. Because, I mean, Mount Kenya and William Ruto parted ways when DP Gachagua left the government. And I think that's where the politics now started to take a different dive. But personally, from where I see it, I still feel he needs to throw and keep throwing a lot of charm offense on Mount Kenya. So
was he testing the waters by deciding to go about this tour at this very moment, just to see how the situation is between, you know, himself and the ground?
I think he has a better opportunity in say if they were to organize, or say if they were to we were to go into the referendum. I look at it from the chronology of events and what has happened in the recent past. Of course, now they're talking about the implementation of the NADCO report, which means, quote unquote, we might just go into a referendum maybe late into December this year. But to anyone who would be campaigning for presidency in 2027, at this point they might need the referendum to test the waters.
It's true.
So the referendum is going to paint the picture of quote the outcome, or it's going to shape the outcome of the 2027 general election. So if I was to campaign for presidency, it would be wise enough for anyone to first test the waters so that you can rearrange or realign or rebuild, if you like, your strategy, your winning strategy. So, well, I see it as an opportunity for us as well, because if that's the way it goes, then it means they will have to put forth a very emotive question, which will have now to make us forget all the hula-baloo that has been going on. And then maybe after that, the direction of politics might take a different
Speaking
direction.
Of forget, what about the appointment of the likes of Lee Kinjui, Kabogo? Does it help improve the relationship with the mountain? That's between the president and the mountain, especially after he did away with the former deputy president.
I really don't think the specific leaders who were reappointed into government have a lot of command on the ground based on the national outlook of politics. You remember the Finance Act of 2023.
Yeah.
And the third force, the Gen Z force. So there's, you might say, there's a new crop of leaders who are getting onto the ground, and they're there, and you've seen them online. I'm sure you've seen these guys online. Very vocal young leaders who are coming up. That crop cannot be wished away because we are also becoming an internet nation. So these guys are able to communicate with the people directly on TikTok and wherever.
It's interesting you put it like that. We're becoming an internet nation. The influence of social media is intense.
Of course it is.
You know, we have new players who are determining the agenda, setting the agenda when it comes to political conversations.
Of course.
Over the weekend, there was a poll by Honorable Caleb Amisi, and this is what he posted, after the Ruto Central tour: let's now vote for the next president of Kenya by coalitions. Please vote for your Kenyan dream team. And this is how the poll looked like, So we had the Ruto Raila team, Matiang'i and Peter Kenneth team, Omutata and Maraga team, and the Kalonzo Gachagua Wamalwa team. Who would you vote for in this, based on this poll? Who do you think would steer Kenya towards the right direction? Who would bring about that change that the Gen Z really desire?
Well, that is his analogy. I might be having a different analogy.
Oh, you probably have a different team.
Yes, in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So I might not. But that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I really...
Because I have the results of the poll. Would you like to hear?
Well, okay, let's.
So, you know, it's interesting because Kenyans voted for Omutata and Maraga as the dream team based on these numbers, and we have about 20,393 votes that were casted. The final results show that Omutata and Maraga got 48%. Second to that, we had Kalonzo, Gachagua, and Wamalwa. They had 20%. The final two are Raila and Ruto, 16%, and Matiang'i and Peter Kenneth with 16%. Are you surprised that Kenyans voted like this online? People really want Omutata to take the reins, you know.
Well, that's a community online, but things could be different on the ground. Kev, I don't think... And please just forgive me for saying this. Akikuyu in Nyeri will not vote in Suba North. Somebody in Tetu will not vote in Suba North. They vote in Tetu.
Okay.
So politics is far much local. I mean, these figures don't really make sense to somebody on the ground at Gatobero Primary School or Kagumo Teachers College. These guys, the politics is very local. It's on the ground.
But the Gen Z are the dominant ones. So they're educated. They know what they want.
Yes, but that's...
regardless of where they are, right?
That's just a small percentage of the population. But there's a huge population. Already, if Kenyans felt bad that Gachagua was sent out of government, then it means we are still not at a level where we are able to tolerate politics in its dynamism.
Right.
Yes, as a country. Because people are so emotional about it. I mean, the country is just got into a frenzy. But we are not talking, we have just personalized politics. We are not talking about the real issues.
Right.
We are not talking about the landmark rulings in Parliament, for example. We're just talking about personalities. And this is where some people like me want to really get into that government.
Right. I
speak about the 13th Parliament because I would easily be there because I was on the race for Tetu constituency.
Correct.
And I look at what they've been able to achieve, and I still feel there are several gaps within.
And this is supposedly the youngest parliament in Kenya's history. In terms of age, of course.
Well, I think
they're very youthful. That's what they say.
Yes, that's true because can see very young and very youthful, but they're still being mentored into this. But I look at Parliament from the point of policy direction, in terms of we need to bring forth amendments to our constitution that will change how we look at issues like legislation, oversight, and representation, because that's where we are failing. We are failing because we don't hear our MPs talk much about the things that really affect the nation. And even when they do, they don't seem to provide solutions. So when I see a member of parliament complaining in the trenches of a funeral about maybe SHA or something like that, I ask myself, you are an MP, what are you doing? What have you done about it? Or are you just complaining with the people on the ground just to get support? And a real MP would say, this is a bill that was brought to the floor of the House, and it attempted to change the social insurance. But there are challenges within the implementation stage of that. So have we defined the problem yet? Have we measured? Have we measured the outputs? Have we had strategies in place to improve and control? Because I don't think we'd go back to the old system, because it was already passed by Parliament and now it was enacted. So it narrows down to what kind of leaders are we electing, and they're expected to behave in a certain way when they're in Parliament, for example. I speak about Parliament because that's where I dream to go and that's where I want to be. I keep asking myself the question of, if Parliament and its formation is entirely based on three structures, that's oversight, representation, and legislation, then how is the scorecard? Who now again oversights Parliament?
Parliamentarians.
Yes. And how has the party politics played out in Parliament, for example? Well, as a country, I see Kenya, when we look at Kenya in the stages of development, roster stages of development, I think we still haven't aligned our legislation needs with where the country is. For example, we are at the takeoff stage. So there are specific dynamics of that exact stage. So we cannot be bringing forth legislations of the age of mass consumption, for example, where we are still struggling with mechanization of agriculture, for example, or we are struggling with infant mortality, or we are struggling with social insurance already, as it were. And we still want to bring forth legislations that don't belong to our class. So that is misplaced priority.
I guess some people would also talk about how Parliament, as it is right now, is at the mercy of the executive. They are in the pockets of the executive. What do you think has to be done? What do you think needs to be done for Parliament to truly be independent? Because just like you're saying, and most Kenyans out there are saying, I mean, it's Parliament that constantly lets us down. You know, when push comes to shove, when guys are looking up to Parliament to give us leadership or some sort, they're the biggest letdown.
True.
People are so disappointed, Kwanzaa, with this Parliament of ours. What really has to be done for parliamentarians to think independently and just work for the people?
I think one way Kenyans can save themselves is by voting in independent MPs. And number two, I think we need to change our laws. I look at Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity, and I keep asking myself, how are we expected to be people of integrity when we are not accountable? So how can integrity go without accountability? And that's why maybe the rain would beat us. So I had made I had written down some bills that I would have wanted to present to the floor of the House. One being on that chapter 6. And I thought about a system where candidates, before they are given the green light to vie, they deposit their manifesto with the IEBC, and they're able to stipulate what they'll do in the 5 years in each of the areas they're expected to work. For example, like a performance contracting.
Right.
So you deposit your manifesto with IEBC and say, in terms of legislation, this is what I'm going to bring to the floor of the House. This is what I'm going to do to the people. Such that in 5 years, IBC will present that manifesto to the people and say, this is what your MP said he will be able to do,
versus,
and this is what he has been able to achieve.
Correct.
So I think at that point, the people will say, we're giving him a chance to serve us in the next parliament or not. So if we change the entire structure of our leadership, and I think this is what we are failing, because we have a new constitution, very vibrant constitution, and at this point in time, we need legislators who understand, who are innovative enough to understand that they need to change the policy direction of this country in order for us to change the politics, because we have an amazing country.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. If you're just listening to us right now, you just joined into the conversation. Guys, we have the one and only Wahome Kipepeo. He's a next-gen political analyst. He's also a politician. And today we're talking all things Mount Kenya uncovered. Now, CS Muturi, former AG, former CS in charge of public service. Where was this? No, yeah. So he really said some very shocking stuff, right? Now, the former PS for public service accused President William Ruto of corruption and declared him unfit to hold office. Muturi, once an ally, now arch nemesis, claims that the president abandoned their shared commitment to integrity in public service that saw them join forces to form the government in 2022. He also alleged that Ruto instead used his office for personal financial gain, a shift that led to their falling out. The president, however, in an interview during his tour at the mountain, said the reason Muturi was kicked out of government is because he was incompetent to serve. But Wakenya wanauliza, surely, why? What's the point of all these revelations right now? Why couldn't you just tell Kenyans all these other things while you were ndani?
I think it's the politics of convenience, and of course, it goes without saying. These guys had gotten together, they formed the government, then the house, just like a house of cards.
Yeah.
But I look at the strategies within government and within the Kenya Kwanza arrangement, and I think Kenyans would have seen this from the word go, because President William Ruto presented to us 3 cards on the onset, at the beginning, for the post of deputy president. So he presented 3 people who he would have wanted to deputize him, and all of them coincidentally came from Mount Kenya. So I think your guess is as good as mine. So he has used 2 cards.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's going to do with the 3rd card, but it's a wait and see game.
Yeah.
Perhaps, who knows? He might just use the 3rd card before the elections, or to propel him to the next government.
Do you think it was necessary for the president to tell guys at the Mudima about his fallout with the former deputy president? Was it necessary? Or he would have just stuck to matters development?
I think it was necessary.
Yeah?
Yes, it was necessary.
Because remember, even he said how, apparently, allegedly, the former DP wanted 10 billion in order to guarantee that the president doesn't end up being a one-term president. Do you believe those extreme statements?
Like I said at the beginning, running government is just like running corporate. He's the CEO, so he has the buttons at his expose, so he can actually push the buttons that he wants to push, because he's legitimately there. And he got there through a democratic process. Until we go into another democratic process, I think him being as a president of the republic, he has some explanation to give to Kenyans. He has some explanations to give to the people who voted for him together with DP Gachagua. And most importantly, he's at their backyard. So he needs, as a first thing, he needs to tell guys, hey, look, we are already in loggerhead, so I need to first explain, I come in peace, so to speak.
Do you think the Murima believes him?
There has been a level of mistrust because, of course, now their person was removed from government, and they didn't feel it was really the main reason for him to be ousted. Yes.
What about Muturi? When he said that, you know what, me, I was fired because of this story for, first of all, the president being so corrupt, and then his son's abduction case and abduction of Gen Zs. You know, do you think Kenyans believe him generally, not just even Mount Kenya? Do you think Kenyans empathize? They're like, oh, that's so sad. How dare he?
So you look at it from this angle. The president says he's incompetent. He says he's corrupt. So where does that leave the Kenyans?
It's interesting you put it like that, because I think at this very moment, anyone that has some sort of gathering and a microphone, if you talk smack about the president, Kenyans will believe you, just because we're very emotive at this very point. I think his approval ratings are very low, and just as we've seen with this whole chance, the way they're gaining momentum so fast, I think Kenyans will believe Muturi, regardless of the facts. But, you know, we'll see, because these things, I guess, they'll end up going to the next level. Probably he has to, you know, I think he's been asked to present evidence.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see what's going to happen. Now, as we wrap up this conversation, we're left with about 2 years to the next elections. If you were President Wahome Kipepeo and you are in this conundrum that our President Ruto is in, what would you do differently to regain the trust that hustlers had in you when you promised them that you were going to empower them? What would you do differently? In other words, I'm asking you, how would you advise the president moving forward? What would you tell him to do different so that, you know, he can sort out all this mess in the country? Because things are getting out of hand. His approval ratings, they say, is astonishingly low.
Well, how did we get here in the first place? And how can you clear a 2.5-year mess with... you need an equal period of time to clear that mess. Yeah. So it's a pile-up of issues. It's a pile-up of
Some
issues.
He probably inherited as well.
Yeah. That's the nature of leadership. So it's 2 years. Yeah. He has another 2 years to clean up that mess. I don't know how he's willing to do it. Yeah. But the focus now is Mount Kenya region. The focus is Mount Kenya region, and I think that's where he's trying to regain some support from. But seems like I've seen leaders gathering to rebuild Gema. And I think that's still a card on the table because, like I said, politics are local.
When you say rebuild, what do you mean?
They're bringing back Gema.
So Gema is not united?
Well, they didn't go into... the Akamba people were not...
Okay, that's what you mean.
Yes, yes. The Akamba people were not politically aligned with the rest of Gikuyu, Embu, and Meru. But now, if the Akamba people join hands with Gachagua, then it looks like the formation of Gema. Yeah. Well, there's no community which can form government alone. There's no single community. Correct. You need like 5 communities. So you need like 5 communities. And really, our strength is in our diversity. I imagine if Kenya had only 2 tribes, we would have fought like you can't believe by now. That's true. Yes. And the strength of our nation is in our diversity. We are a very vibrant nation. We can't really, because we have these neighbors, you have these neighbors, you have these other neighbors. So you're probably fighting these neighbors rivers and these are the ones are. But
Yeah.
that diversity is what would keep the country together.
I agree.
You'd have like 5 communities moving in one side,
Yeah.
and you will never wish away your Matara and our Wahome. So if we brought the changes from the grassroots going up, what they had proposed, then that would have been a very good model of governance.
Yeah.
But I think they had not anticipated things like the funding sources for better, and I think they have found themselves in a crisis. But the dynamics of social mobility as well could play out, and that could explain 1 or 2 reasons why we have to dig deeper into our pockets. More and more people getting into the middle class level. And that what we need an economic balance. As a president, you might need to understand that as there's more social mobility upwards, you may need also to bring a level of balance so that the country grows in a certain trajectory. Okay. That is basically economics. Yeah.
And we have a final question from Mikey, who's a Gen Z.
Okay.
I like that.
Yes, for me, Mr. Wahome, as a resident and as a leader of the Mount Kenya regime, did Ruto reach any of your expectations? And if he did, can you briefly tell us what they are?
My personal expectations?
Yes, sir.
No, he didn't.
Okay.
No, he didn't, because I remember the other time he had come just after the Kenya Kwanza government got elected. I passed on my business card to him at a crowd which had gathered.
Interesting. He took it.
Yeah, he took it.
Did he call you back?
No, he actually had promised that he's going to call me back because he took the card, read it, and then he put it in his pockets. I was really hoping that I have kept my phone on, hoping that he'd call me.
Yeah.
And the reason was actually tourism. I actually had a rough day trying to get that card to him, but finally I did it in front of a crowd that had gathered at my constituency.
Very impressive.
Yes. So personally, I'd feel so far not yet, because as a person I was expecting his call. Yeah. And maybe he'll still call, who knows?
Maybe he still has the card. The president is very busy.
Of course.
I like that.
It's just like he asked a personal question. Yeah. I mean, personally, I feel maybe he'd have remembered during my other time I'd come to inspect these projects. Some man from Tetu gave me their card.
It's interesting. This story for remembering. Apparently, I was told about the former president, the late Moi. He would remember. He would go to a certain area and say, kijana wenu moja hapa. Wahome. Mulete mbele. Thank you so much for coming through, Wahome. It's been real. You're going to be on the ballot again. You're running for MP?
Yes, I have told you. I don't feel the current 13th Parliament, which I would have been a member, have done enough in terms of what I was looking forward to. Yes. In terms of the bills they needed to have brought to the floor of the House. And mainly that's tourism. I'm in tourism. And I feel the communities surrounding the national parks and communities surrounding forest ecosystem need to be given priority. They need to be empowered. Like where I come from, Tetu, we have 3 forest ecosystems. That's Kavage, Zaina, and Kiadongoro. And that is 42% of Kenya's forest cover. That means Nyeri is almost like a forest in itself. Yes. But the communities do not directly benefit. And what I propose is that we need to preserve, say a park entry, we need to preserve it at 50%. Right. And the last thing is the management of tourism resources. Yes. Just as His Excellency President William Ruto presented Masai Mara to the Narok County, he should have at least come to Mount Kenya and given us the Aberdares to be managed by at least Nyeri, Laikipia, Nyandarua, and maybe Murang'a.
Yeah.
I feel once we change the policies in terms of management of resources, more and more people will start identifying with the resources they have at that level. Right. And of course, it will be able to employ more and more. Yes.
Wow. I'm going to have to cut you short. Thank you so much. It's been a really awesome conversation. Definitely very resourceful. Remember, guys, that is Wahome Kipepeo. He's a next-gen political analyst and a politician from Tetu. Today we've been talking about Mount Kenya Uncovered. Well, when we come back, Nairobi Chronicles. Thank you so much once again, Kipepeo. It's been real. It's 11 minutes after 8. We're keeping it moving. We'll be back in a bit. Right now, I've got some Chloe and Lado for the night. Twende kazi.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Robert, Mommy. You remember I saying there's a lot going on?
You know, it's cool. I gotta go back to rehearsal.
We don't gotta tell the world.
I gotta go.
Come on, Mama.